right, shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
With the brothers of Great Millstone, Charlotte, coming at you again through the Spirit Power Yahweh by Simeon Shai. And before we get started, we'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught us this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. To you, we say shalom.
Shalom.
So, in this lesson, we're pretty much going to go into the tribes again, the 12 tribes. And this one, we're going to be going into the tribe of Simeon, right? Breaking down the characteristics, also future prophecy pertaining to this tribe. And just pretty much breaking down who these people are, because the scriptures tell us in the last days certain things and characteristics that these people would embody, right? So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this thing. I guess
I got
what's going
Genesis.
on. Oh, go ahead, bro.
You want me to start with Genesis 49?
If you can, go ahead and start with Genesis 29. We just go into the birth of Simeon, and then we transition over to Genesis 49.
Okay. This is Genesis chapter 29 and verse 33. And it says, I'll start at verse 32. And it says, Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Shamaiwan, or Simeon.
Mm-hmm. So Shamaiwan, right, which pretty much goes into being heard, right? If I'm not mistaken, Yawam, you can break that down if you want. The name Shamaiwan.
Because when you go into that word, you got the Shah, the Ma, which the Shah and the Ma together, that goes into the word for name. So when you're talking about a name talks about characteristics, but then it also gives an accurate report. So going back to the scripture, I'm gonna get this in the commentary, Genesis 29 and 33, and it says the birth of Simeon. It says the second child born to Yaakov through Leah was named by Leah Shamaiwan, meaning hearing. It says Leah hoped all would notice that the Lord had heard her. So putting that together with the name, all right, the word or the letters since Shamaiwan, or Simeon's name, is Sham, and again that's the report. The Lord understood her report. So in return, that it means to essentially to watch. Because essentially the Lord was watching. Her essential report. So he blessed her with a son, and that was Simeon, Shamaiwan.
Mm-hmm. Baba Bashar, do you mind reading verse 34 as well? Because one point that you got to take into account in here, because this is gonna add to the further in the lesson. This is the second born of who was it, Leah? If I'm not mistaken. So this is the second born. You have Reuben, and now you have Simeon, who's the second born of Jacob. Baba Bashar, am I reading verse 34 as well?
This is Genesis 29 and verse 34. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Loyah, or Levi.
Right. Levi means joined unto me. So this is the third born. So you can already kind of picture the relationship that these the second born and the third born are going to have, right? Since they're going to be pretty much growing up with each other. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into Genesis 49. Baba Shah.
I got that. This is Genesis 49. I'm starting at verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
It says, and Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. And I'm going to jump down. Verse 5. It says, Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments of cruelty are in their habitations.
Right. So it says Simeon and Levi are brethren, right? Because we understand that they're brothers from the same mother too. But this is primarily going into the last days, right? We read in the first verse something that should befall them in the last days, meaning that they're going to be um, neighbors, right? Really, when you look at it, these two tribes they inhabit the land of what was originally called Hispaniola,
Mhm.
right? But now it's been divided on the on the west side being Haiti, and the right side being the Dominican Republic, right? But when you see the tensions, well, actually, we'll get into that here in a minute. I'm jumping the gun, but pretty much they'll be cohabiting. They are cohabiting this island, right? But you go ahead. Oh, but it says also just add to the point, instruments of cruelty are in their habitations, right? Because when you look at what Simeon and Levi are into, they're into a lot of witchcraft. You
Yep.
know, with Levi having the voodoo and Simeon having what they call Santeria and Brujeria, which Brujeria just means witchcraft. And Santeria is a form of witchcraft, but they use it with saints. You know, when you go to these different Hispanic stores that have like candles with
Yep.
saints on it, they'll have you know, idols of saints and stuff like that. You know, and they do different rituals um, to pretty much uh, you know, whatever they pray for, they'll pretty much do a little ritual for it, and they'll pray to that certain idol or that certain saint or whatever, and you know, they feel like you know they can get a good outcome out of that. But Baba Kushta, yeah, yeah, con. So there's a couple images, yeah, of what Jake is heavily involved in. And I will say this, you know, it's not even just the Dominican Republic that's into this stuff. You know, when you look at Southern Kingdom, I mean the Northern Kingdom in general, you know, they be into that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any Latin mart or any type of Hispanic, section in the grocery store, they always have that shit there, man.
Mm-hmm. Bob Kushag, you mind getting that article,
Yep.
pulling that up because
Can I get a quick precept real fast?
go ahead, bro.
This is Hawashai, Hosea chapter 4, verse 17. And it says, Aparayam, Ephraim, is joined to idols, let him alone. And we understand that Ephraim is the head tribe of the northern kingdom. And ultimately, Simeon and Levi are both, or excuse me, Levi is southern kingdom, but essentially, northern kingdom is heavy into a lot of idolatry, which Ephraim being symbolic of northern kingdom.
Right, right. Hey, and what does the scripture say about the whole thing in witchcraft? I believe that's in
I got you right here.
Con.
All right, this is Exodus chapter 22, verse 18. It says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live."
Right, that's why not suffer a witch to live, and that's the reason why you see a lot of hurricanes hitting that island. You know, especially Haiti, especially these Levites, right? They be getting jacked up by these hurricanes and all these tropical storms and shit. Because ultimately the Most High is judging Levi, but as well as Simeon, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of things be going on over there as far as judgment. But that's ultimately the judgment of the Lord because you know of all the shit that they doing, man. Especially this Santeria, Brujeria, right? Voodoo and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because really that's all really when you look into it, a lot of the shit that they do, ultimately they got it from the
Ham.
heathen. They got it from the heathen, but sometimes they'll get some of the stuff from the scriptures and then they'll twist it up and devote it to idols,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, let me see. Let me get that article. I can't
I
really
had
see it.
a quick precept just to speak on that the witchcraft thing because you made a point about that land is constantly being hit by natural disasters because that's the Lord judging our people for that witchcraft. This
Uh,
is Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verse 9. It says, "When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy power giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, child sacrifice, or that
Mm-hmm.
useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord, because of these abominations, the Lord thy power doeth drive them out from before thee. So just reading that in the NLT real quick from verse 10 to make it simpler. It says, for example, never sacrifice your son or daughter as a burnt offering. Do not let your people practice misfortune, or sorry, practice fortune telling, or use sorcery, or interpret omens, or engage in witchcraft, or cast spells, or function as mediums, or psychics, or call forth the spirits of the dead. Anyone who does these things are detestable to the Lord. It is better because the other nations have done these detestable things that the Lord your power will drive them out ahead of you. So it's
Mm-hmm.
on the point of the Lord hates all forms of witchcraft, no matter what our people try to call it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I can testify to this. Amongst Northern Kingdom, especially when it comes to Simeon, they have a lot of witch doctors.
Hmm.
And I've seen this a couple times. Where they would get certain leaves and certain like plants, and they will like cut off the head of a chicken, and then they'll start like doing some little ritual with that. Like they really be tapping into that, left hand energy, man. You know, and that should be heavy amongst really Simeon,
Hmm.
but also Levi. But that's the reason again, like the brother said, that's the reason why the Most High is jacking up that place. And we're just gonna see things start ramping up even more because, especially since we're entering the time right now into Jacob's trouble. Really, we're in the time of Jacob's trouble. We're about to start seeing more and more shit start piling up on these Jakes, man. The wicked of our people, right?
That's right.
But I want to touch on this article real quick. Um, it says superstitions, witchcraft, omens, and more. And I'm just reading off my phone because I don't want to put my face, all up on the screen. But it
Okay,
says,
I can zoom in. I got you. Uh,
God.
oh, why is shit tripping? You go ahead, bro. I'll figure it
God.
out.
But it says superstitions, witchcraft, omens, and more. It says witchcraft, mysteriosos, possession, cures, and other miscellaneous superstition, beliefs, and omens. So it says many Dominicans do believe in witchcraft and other mysterious spiritual occurrences. See, so this is already documented. Even um, just in articles and stuff that we find, is documenting what our people are into, right? Which goes back to the scripture, right? Those instruments of cruelty. But it says many Dominicans do believe in witchcraft and other mysterious spiritual occurrences. Many of the beliefs come from religious and spiritual backgrounds and also from their African and Spanish heritage. This mix of a little bit of everything combines to make the Dominican culture so unique, interesting, and wonderful. I don't know about wonderful, but it says uh, witchcraft, mysteriosos, possessions, and cures. It says witchcraft is said to cause many illnesses here in the Dominican Republic, and that's true, right? You be hearing stories, about other people putting hexes on people, putting
Mhm.
curses on other people, right? And they do these rituals, these type of different witchcrafts or types of forms of witchcraft to put these things on other people. But it says, especially if an illness or disease comes on swiftly or lasts a long time. Many illnesses are said to occur when a person hires a brujo, sorcerer, a male witch, or a bruja, sorceress, female witch, to call upon the spirit of a deceased person to gain vengeance or because they are envious of someone. And this is heavy. among Simeon. Since we're talking about Simeon, we're gonna hone in on Simeon. This is heavy among Simeon. Man. You know, when you go down to DR, you really gotta watch out who you deal with. Especially these women because they be putting love spells on you, be putting all kinds of shit on you, man. There's a lot of witches down there that would just put a spell on you just for the hell of it, man.
I got a scripture if I can.
Kind
Kind of Romans chapter 8 and verse 16, and it says, "The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High." Now, now we got the scripture, Hosea 4 and 17, essentially illustrating how Simeon, and or Northern Kingdom is very heavy into the idols and stuff like that. So essentially, articles as this, and the other articles that
of.
we'll get, is essentially a attestation, that essentially, or it's more points to solidify, the scripture right here, the Spirit itself bearing witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High, because the scriptures essentially illustrate who we are as a people, and essentially the things that was listed in Genesis, the 49th chapter, are essentially what we're seeing in the last days.
Mm-hmm. And I was watching, a couple of videos before leading up to this lesson. I was watching a couple of videos, and pretty much the videos I was watching, it was like a documentary, but they were pretty much going into how over there in that land, Haiti and Dominican Republic. I mean, this like is heavily filled with witchcraft, like to the point where like it's like an everyday thing. Like some people be into that superstition, that witchcraft type of thing, wearing charms and shit like that. And some of them don't even know it. They be selling it, on the side of the street, and people just buy it. The tourists come around and buy it, and they just don't even know what they're buying. You know.
Hey, this is why you said earlier, you gotta watch out,
Right.
because a lot of idolatry has been mixed up within our culture, Northern and Southern Kingdom, and we don't even know it. So this is why
Hmm.
one of the reasons why a lot of Northern Kingdom, when they walk past the camp, they look at us with disgust because number one, it's that hatred between the tribes, but also, just looking at here the things that we talk about, the signs we got, and it throws them off because, like you said, they're heavily mixed in with idolatry, man.
Hmm. Let me continue reading a little bit more. It says, the end result of this person that use this means of getting even can become sick themselves. You see,
Mm.
so a lot of this stuff backfires on them because ultimately, uh, whenever it comes to Jake, you're not really supposed to be tapping into that. What I'm saying, you're supposed to be tapping into the righteous, into really be tapping into the right hand side, man. Right? Which is why Jake that taps into that shit, they end up, fucking themselves over, as it says, sometimes they become sick themselves. They try to put a hex on somebody, try to fuck somebody over, but then they themselves get sick because them demons start taking over their bodies and just polluting them, man. Start,
Yep.
rotting them from the inside. But it says,
And that's the spirit, because I've been watching different videos of people that used to be, into Satanism and do the spells, and they always say that the ones that leave it, that they pretty much were losing themselves, whether their health got bad, they
mm,
felt like the Lord was about to kill them or whatever the case may be. But that goes add to your point because our people, we're not supposed to be into this type of stuff, man. So you can't control these demons. All right.
right,
We're not in the position right now being in this flesh to control, spirit. So Jake may, think that they're, working with these demons, but these demons really playing you.
right, right. It says, you tap into this thing, you're pretty much putting yourself into a trick bag. You might win for a little bit, but at the end of the day, as they say, the tab is due. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But it says, continuing on, it says this because they become possessed themselves unknowingly. Because of this possession, they become physically or mentally sick. Yeah, some of them become bugged out, man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Start tapping into that witchcraft and start, losing themselves, like the brother mentioned. They start, hallucinating. They start, thinking of evil thoughts. Some of them even start even commit suicide. Because shit is starting becoming unbearable. You know, I seen that in the article that I mean in the documentary that I watched.
Mm, kind, if I can add to you, because in order for you to get more power from the left hand, you have to defile yourself, and the more defiled you become, pretty much, the more you're able to tap into that. And this is like you said, you'll see Jake pretty much get bugged out because they'll go too deep into it.
Right. It says, this spirit that causes sickness to the unsuspecting human is called the baka. It says this spirit, and that kind of reminds me of what's that? The Bacchus spirit.
Hmm.
But I'm just speaking as a man. But it says this spirit is brought into existence to protect the owner of some property or to make another sick. Any person that the owner, and hey, that's another thing. It says to protect some property. You know, some Jake be using this witchcraft, especially over there, to protect themselves. That use it as like a cloak of protection, but not knowing that the ultimate protection is the Lord. You see, so it just shows you how far how low really our people have gotten, and how far away our people have strayed away from the truth. Right?
Hmm.
They see protection from these idols, they see protection from demons. You know what I'm saying? They go to these witchcraft, these witches, these witch doctors, and ultimately just to end up getting temporarily somewhat cured, and then just to become worse and start waxing worse and worse.
Hmm.
But it says any person that the owner of the spirit comes in contact with will become sick or crazy. So it says, but that's pretty much it on that. You know, we don't really got to delve too deep into this.
Got it.
Um, but that was pretty much the point, right? You know, just showing you how Jake be really over there be really tapping into that witchcraft. And that's going back into what we read in Genesis 49, those instruments of cruelty, right? Because they don't just do it to protect themselves, they also do it to, bring harm unto others, you
Right.
know?
And this is why the Lord is jacking them up. I got one more. This is
Hmm.
Jeremiah 5:25. It says, your iniquities have turned away these things, and your sins have withholden good things from you. All right. That's why, over there in Dominican Republic, hey, that country is rough. They live very hard lives, mainly
Hmm.
because they're poor. But this is, when you look at it, that's the Lord, putting the curses on them heavy because of what they're into. That
Right,
island, both sides of that island, because you have Haiti, all right, and you have the Dominican Republic. They both are in terrible living conditions, and that's mainly due to their sins.
right, right. And Haiti, in general, Haiti is like the worst. It's like the poorest country in
Hmm.
the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
And then you got Dominican Republic right beside of it, so you know that they share that poverty, man.
Yeah, and that's the spirit, because when you think about so-called Dominicans, most people don't think that that island would be that bad, because you think of Dominican, you think of the beautiful women. They
Hmm.
when they do talk about the Dominican, they talk about the beaches, the water, and all that, but the actual country is a shithole.
Right, right. I mean, right now, I know I've read into it too because they talked about how there's a lot of tourism going on over there because the
Mm,
president is uplifting the place a little bit as far as like tourism.
mm-hmm.
But when you go into like the average neighborhood, that should be downtrodden, man. That should be
Right.
it'd be slums.
Mm-hmm. Then I
But
go
we can
back.
go back to that Genesis 49, Baba Kasha.
Yep. Genesis chapter 49:5. It says, Simeon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter into their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox.
God. So pretty much when you read this in the NL, well, I'm reading it in the KJV, and it says, "O my soul, come not thou." This is verse 6. "O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly," and that's their secret, right? Going into their witchcraft. Because what do? They gather together. They do whatever whatever conjuring or whatever spell that they do, and they do it, in the midst of a congregation, you know, and but the right here is pretty much saying, hey, the Most High is not to be with them. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, and that's what we see. You know what I'm saying? The Most High jacking these jakes up, even though they might be prospering a little bit. When they do that shit. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like we were saying, the tab comes due. So at the end of the day, the Most High ends up jacking these people up. So that's the Lord not being, in their council or in their assembly.
Mm-hmm.
But it says, "Mine honor be not thou united." See, and that's another thing too, because when you go over there, you will see a lot of division between the Haitians and the Dominicans, right? The division between Levi and Simeon. That's ultimately the curses. But this is something that, as we reading, this is a sign of end times, right?
Yeah.
And Baba Kashah, if you don't mind, you mind getting the next article?
I get that precept too.
Go ahead, bro.
Con, this is Dabaryam, Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 54. And it says, so that the man that is tender, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. And pretty much, just land back on the point, going into that enmity that's between, Levi and Simeon, the so-called Haitians and the so-called Dominicans, they don't really mesh like that, which again, it really goes back to the curses.
God, God. Yeah, because even though they might share one island, this is a great division. Because and what's spiritual about it is that island, Hispaniola, well, it was originally called Hispaniola, but that island, they have like actually like a divide, a mountain that divides both of them. They
Mm-hmm.
have a big range of mountains that pretty much divides Levi and Simeon. So that's even more spiritual.
Con. And if I can add, just so we get the full meat off the bone with that,
Hmm.
because you made mention of the curses, all
Hmm.
right? Because like you said, when you went into the birth, all right, hey, Simeon and Levi, they were close back in the ancient
Right.
world. And so now, like you said, it's due to the curses, but also end time prophecy. So I just wanted to speak on that real quick. Could you grab that Deuteronomy 28 again?
Mm-hmm. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 54. It says, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave.
Right, and this is partly why you have that hatred between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. All right, which we know the full, other part of that is when the kingdom split with Jeroboam and Rehoboam. But just going into how, like I said, that wasn't always the case, because going into the part where it says how in their anger they slew a man, you gotta go into the history, which for time we're not going to read it, but you can read it. It's Genesis, the 34th chapter. So I'll just read a quick summary of it. So, in fact, let me put it on the screen real quick.
If I'm gonna add real quick,
You got it.
this is the reason why I mentioned in the beginning. Whenever I mentioned the how Simeon was the second born and Levi was the third born. Like, I don't know, like brothers that have siblings that you grew like, it's like the next in line that you grew up like, and then you have the next brother in line, and usually the next brother that you have, like you two will be close. You know what I'm saying? The ones that are younger, y'all won't. I mean, y'all probably be close, but y'all won't have that same type of connection than the one you grew up with, right? So seeing these two brothers, they were close. And as the brother's going to read, it's going to mention, what they did, uh, according because of their anger, because of well, you'll read it,
Yeah,
Salaki.
you good. So this is just read the summary. This is on medium.com. It says in ancient Canaan, where Jacob and his sons lived, Dinah, Jacob's daughter, was raped by an African prince of the Hivites. This prince, Shechem, strongly lusted for Dinah and attempted to have his father, King Hamor, arrange a marriage between him and the Israelite daughter. After the sons of Jacob heard what happened to their sister, they were enraged and lied to King Hamor and his son, telling them if the Hivite men were circumcised, that the prince could then marry their sister Dinah, because they those Hamites wanted in, you know, on the blessings. They saw how Israel was prospering. So that marrying of the families would have gave that line of, part of the blessing. So the spirit didn't allow that to happen. Right. So it
Right.
says the Hivite city agreed to this and were happy to bind their families with the Hebrew Israelites through the marriage. However, Levi and Simeon both took their swords, came into the Hivite city on the third day from when the Hivites were still sore from their circumcision, and slaughtered all the men in the city because of what the prince had done to their sister. This put the entire Hebrew Israelite family at risk among the rest of the Canaanites, and Jacob was angry with them. This is what Jacob had to say about his two sons. But just adding to what the brother Yeshaya was saying earlier. All right, so this is why we see that the curses have really hit the tribes, each and every one of them. All right, with that hate towards the brother.
Mm-hmm.
And that hatred among northern and southern kingdom, and it's especially with them two because they share the same island. Yet it's a divide. All right, to where they beef with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put that back.
Fine. Yes, so right here, it pretty much goes into like the brother Yawan mentioned. This shows the spirits bear witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High, because everything that we're saying and we're bringing out to Scripture, is being manifested, through these articles, right?
Mhm.
These articles is a document of showing pretty much showing us right now in our time, you know, uh, of who we are, man, right?
Mhm.
Pertaining to prophecy, right? But anyway, it says there's a long story behind Haitianismo in the Dominican Republic. So it says tens of thousands of people in the Dominican Republic are being stripped of their citizenship on the grounds that they or their ancestors were illegal immigrants. Thousands have already been deported across the border to Haiti because of uh, because it is assumed all illegal migrants come from there. The country ruling applies to anyone whose family arrived in the country after 1929 and can't document their status. Being born in the Dominican Republic doesn't make a difference. So I did a little bit of research on this, um, and I have the other article for it. We'll probably get that a little bit later. But
Mhm.
going into the history of Haiti and pretty much how it was a lot of wars that was going on at that time in that land, right, of Hispaniola. There was a pretty much war against the Spanish, war against the French, and then the Dominicans uh, um, having a war against Haiti to get their independence. So there's a lot of tension over there in that land, and to the point where we're seeing it even now. You know what I'm saying? In the form of hate. Brother. As a brother read. Brother shall have an evil eye towards his brother. So that them curses really took hold of Jake, and really it's all the spirit of the Lord. That made this come to pass. For prophecy's sake, right?
Right.
But it says, let me read more. It says some are calling the latest manifestation of anti-Haitianismo in the Dominican Republic. Both countries are on the same island of Hispaniola. Their relations are a story of race, identity, and money. The Dominican Republic is not a rich country, but it is a lot better off than its neighbor Haiti. Um, Let me skip down a little bit. As a matter of fact, I'll read this. This is in terms of per capita GDP is about 6 times richer. So thousands of Haitians go to and that's not a lot. When it says 6 times richer, it's not really a lot because when you go into the wealth of Haiti, bro, they're like dirt poor.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Dirt poor. I mean, being 6 times richer than Haiti, you can't really brag about that. But you know, they're a little bit better off than Haiti, you can say. But reading back, it says Haitians and their descendants may make up as many as 1/10 in the Dominican Republic's population. Some Dominicans are unhappy about that, as they see Haitians as different, and some fear for the identity of their nation. And and also there was a dictator back in the 1920s over there in Dominican Republic, and really I did some digging into this guy. Um, Let me find his name real quick. But pretty much this man, he was an Edomite,
Hmm.
um, and he pretty much started putting that divide amongst Haitians and Dominicans. So it's just Esau's playbook: divide and conquer. Um, Bear with me. His name is Rafael Trujillo. This guy right here. I don't know if y'all brothers can see it.
I'm about to put him on the screen.
Right, so that's that guy right there. So I did some digging, and on his father's side, his on his father's side, his grandfather stems from Spain. So this guy's an Edomite, And when you go into the history, he was pretty much the cause of him spreading that hatred towards Levi. He was calling them, a separate people, calling them Africans, calling them, the same rhetoric that has been spewed, onto the other tribes, right? So this man is well, it all goes back to being to Esau, man. Esau with his divide and conquer tactics, to the point where you see now it's still in effect.
Esau has a knack for finding himself in positions of power where you would
Yeah.
never think that they go back to him, but the history never fails, man. This shows that
hmm
this is the Edomite, man.
hmm
I wouldn't be surprised if this nigga went back to the small heads.
Right, right. A lot of these leaders, man, that Jake be having, especially back then, they were pushed as being, um, how do you call it, like nationalists, being for the
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, when you go into their agenda and you go into what they do, they really be destroying Jake. So that just shows you, who really they work for.
Right. I got a quick precept if I can.
Go ahead.
Kind of Matthew, Matthew chapter 12 and verse 29, and it says, "Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except first he bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house." Now that strong man, being Jake, essentially what Esau did was that, like you mentioned, the divide and conquer, and by dividing and
Yep.
conquering and
Yep.
separating the tribes, Esau was able to maneuver and essentially push forth his enterprise, as we see in like Mexico. I think it's I think it was a female president, like she like the first Amalekite or something
Mhm.
like that, and then
Yep.
people like this dude right here.
Yeah,
hmm
a lot of those. Well, I mean, it's on topic of Esau put himself aware, but a lot of those so-called Saudi princes, I believe them is Edomites too, man. All of these
hmm
people in positions of power, Esau was mixed up in there, and this is why, real quick, grabbing this, I never
hmm
heard it before. So what you're doing is bringing out good information. So this is Jeremiah 49:10. It says, "But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not." And so the fact that you uncovered the fact that that whole racial divide really stems from Esau pushing, this bullshit rhetoric of how the
hmm
tribes are different from each other. That's the Lord, continually exposing him, man. All right,
hmm
Esau is being exposed. Something new is coming out about this devil every day, man.
Right.
The spirit of the Lord.
It's the spirit of the Lord. That's right, man. Because it was really the spirit that made me do some digging on this man. Because I seen him, but what really stand me to do some research, or push me to do some research, was whenever I read this article going into how he was pretty much the start of that hatred, of that divide with Levi. And then I did some digging, and then kind of find out his on his mother's side, he's Dominican. Like, well, he's not Dominican, but on his mother's side, his mother's Dominican. She's Simeon, right? But on his father's side, he's a Edomite,
Hey,
stemming back to Spain.
we got to get that numbers. Go ahead, get that numbers 118 just to show it. Look, hey, this is things that we got to know.
Okay.
Esau, a lot of the times he was able to disguise himself as other nations because of what the mother is. Because in the Talmud, it'll tell you that you are what your mother is. So a lot of these Edomites, especially the Amalekites, all right, they push that the mother is the one who determines who you are. When the Bible says it's actually your father.
This is Numbers 1:18. In the assembly, Salakia, they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names from 20 years old and upward by their polls.
Break it down.
So that's pretty much it, bro. Hey, the lineage, pretty much you are what your father is, right? The lineage is the seed is planted by the man, like just like anything that you plant on the ground. The soil or the earth is the mother, and whatever seed you plant in the ground, that's what's gonna come out. You plant an apple seed, you're gonna grow an apple tree. You grow orange. You plant orange seed, you're gonna grow oranges, right? The same thing as a man. The man carries a seed. So if the man was an Israelite, the son or the daughter is gonna come out to be an Israelite, right? If it's an Edomite, as far as this guy's case, his grandfather was an Edomite on his father's side, so that makes his father an Edomite. That makes him an Edomite. See?
And then just hey, we're in the spirit right now, so I just went on chat to back up what you just said, so we're gonna get that. Hey, fully expose this nigga.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it says the rivalry and deep mistrust between Haitians and Dominicans has roots that go back centuries, but Raphael Leonidas, I say his last name Trujillo,
Yeah, Trujillo.
dictator of the Dominican Republic from 1930 to 1961,
Mm-hmm.
amplified and weaponized it for his own regime's survival. Here's a breakdown of how Trujillo spread and entrenched the hatred. So it says historical roots before Trujillo, colonial divide, the island of Hispaniola was split. The western side became the French Saint Domingo, later Haiti, and the eastern side renamed Spanish Santo Domingo after later the Dominican Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Haitians, mostly of African descent, that's bullshit, and Dominicans, a mix of Spanish, indigenous, and African ancestry, which just to cut that bullshit real quick, because there's no such thing as African. All right, we know that came from a Edomite conqueror. All right, Leo
Mm-hmm.
Scipio Africanus, and then it says a mix of for Simeon or Dominicans. It said a mix of Spanish, indigenous, and African heritage, which you can't be a mix of any blood. You are what your father is. So we know you tribes, you Dominicans, you don't come from those Spanish, because Spanish are Edomites, all right. And indigenous, they play on the Taino Indian title, which we'll get that in a little bit. But like I
Mm-hmm.
said, there's no such thing as African. So if you weren't originally called Haitians and Dominicans, then what were you called before that?
Right.
It says develop different languages, religions, and cultures. Haitian occupation 1822 to 1844. Haiti unified the island under President Jean Pierre Boyer. Though it abolished slavery in the East, Dominican elites resented Haitian rule, land reforms, heavy taxation, and attempts to suppress Spanish language and Catholic traditions. And I'm just speculating in the spirit, this is after Haiti rebelled from France, I'm assuming, and those
Yeah.
Dominican was still ruled by these Edomite Spaniards. So this is probably why that hatred was pushed too. Just speculating.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's Saki, brother gonna say something?
Oh no, no, no. I was just gonna say, Hold on, so I guess a little echo. But anyway, I was just gonna say, um, damn, Salakia. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. I was gonna say, a lot of the shit that Esau likes to push is just the like colorism. He likes to push
Mhm.
also what's it called? Damn, when you care about your nation, I forgot what it's called.
I mean, that's
I
pretty
guess
much
national. I guess
nationalism or
nationalism.
racism.
Yeah, and pretty much he be using that to pretty much trick Jake into
Mhm.
pretty much hating someone else or directing that their hatred towards their own people. Really, that's exactly what he did. You know, he'll pretty much say, oh, we because we speak Spanish and because we live on this piece of land, we're this people and those people over there, they're different. We gotta hate them because they're trying to take over us and take over, what I'm saying, destroy us and all this and that. But really, when you really look into it, Haiti was mad at Spain because of what they did to them.
Exactly, because they're still Edomites.
Yeah, but Jake is very simple, especially at that time coming out of slavery. Jake is very simple and very, very easy, very easy to manipulate, and we see the fruits of that right now.
Hmm. It says this planted seeds of anti-Haitian sentiment among Dominicans. Now getting into this dude's rise. Said Trujillo came to power in 1930 with U.S. backing, of course. You know, Esau planting them seeds. It said to consolidate his dictatorship, he pushed a nationalist ideology, which is spirit, what you just said,
Hmm.
that defined Dominican identity as white, Hispanic, Catholic, and anti-Haitian. Because, like, hey, it's right on point. Esau, one of his major tactics of division is color psychology. All right.
Hmm.
It says he portrayed Haitians as a threat to Dominican racial purity and sovereignty, even though the two people had long intermingled on the border. We're the same people.
Hmm.
All right. So it says the Parsley Massacre in October 1937.
That's the spirit.
Trulio.
That's the spirit.
Oh,
I was just gonna get that too.
oh,
You
oh,
got
you
it. Go
see
ahead and
that?
read it, bro.
Okay, Con. It says in October 1937, Trujillo ordered the mass killing of Haitians and dark skinned Dominicans living near the border. His soldier used the word, how you say that?
Uh,
Perheli,
better heal.
perheli or parsley as
Hmm.
a shibboleth. Haitians speaking Creole often pronounced it differently. Estimates 10,000 to 30,000 Haitians slaughtered. Trujillo framed it as protecting the nation from Haitian infiltration. And like I said,
If
you
I
want to
may,
speak on that, bro? You got it.
if I may, real quick, I know the Billy Yuan might want to speak on that shibboleth.
So the Shabbalah pretty much served as like a secret password. It says his soldiers used the word perahil, parsley, as a
Mm,
shibboleth. Haitian speaking Creole often pronounce it differently. So pretty much, what they did was they outcasted those that couldn't say it a certain way. And that's kind of
mm,
how it's done in America. Present day. Esau might push a certain mindset on Jake that speak a certain vernacular and giving Jake that mindset to where it's pretty much dividing and conquering.
right, because when you go back when you go into the scriptures, that whole shibboleth and sabalat, what was it, shabalat or sabalat and how's it go?
Con,
Shabalat and sabalat, right?
yep, Shabaloth and Sabaloth.
Right. So pretty much Ephraim they couldn't pronounce was it sabalat, right? Or was it shabalat? Or how did Ephraim pronounce it? Shabalat?
Like I
I'm gonna
said, y'all
grab it.
want to just go ahead and get it. You need to grab it
Yeah,
real quick.
this
Yeah,
I read that definition while you look for that. This is the definition of the word shibboleth. It says a custom, principle, or belief distinguishing a particular class or group of people, especially a long-standing one regarded as outmoded or no longer important.
mm-hmm.
mm,
Con Judges 12 and verse 5. A good example of that, present day, how, at one time, those that, say dozens of decades ago, the mindset was to people was against Moses, but now more so in this present day and age, people are for them, so how they will essentially see if someone's on the same side as them, they throw out different little passcodes, So that's a present day example that we got, currently. But this is Judges 12 and verse 5, and it says, "And the Gileadites took the passages of Jordan before the Ephraimites, and it was so that when those Ephraimites which were escaped said, Let me go over, that the men of Gilead said unto him, Art thou an Ephraimite? If he said, Nay, then they said unto him, Say now Shabaloth, and he said, Sabaloth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Jordan, and there fell at that time of the Ephraimites 40 and 2,000.
Right. So there you go. Right. So that was used as a way to, tell, like pretty much as a telltale sign of who they were. So in the same thing with this, they use that word perejil, so the Haitians, they couldn't pronounce it right. They couldn't pronounce it how you say it in Spanish. So they had that Creole, dialect. So they pronounced it a different way. So that was a telltale sign that, oh, you ain't from here. You know what I'm saying? You ain't one of us. So what they did was that they will kill them. They will massacre them.
Yeah, because if I could add, because Creole is a mix between French and the Haitian language. So even though Spanish and French, they have similar words that sound and mean the same, but like I said, it's a different dialect.
Mhm.
All right, so finishing this off. So propaganda, indoctrination, education system, Dominican schools taught that Haitians were inferior, barbaric, and uncivilized. Media and arts, Trujillo funded historians, writers, and artists to emphasize Dominican whiteness and Spanish heritage while erasing quote unquote African roots, which we know, like I said, we're not African. It says public rhetoric. He exaggerated cultural differences, claiming Dominicans were fundamentally different from Haitians, even though they shared the same island and many mixed traditions. Because these Edomites knew that. Because think about that, just from the in the spirit, if Esau allowed Levi and Simeon to be on one accord, man, that alone will be a problem for him. So he had to put that division amongst the two to keep them from joining forces against him, because
Mhm.
he knows they're the same people because they share they share remnants of our customs. All right, this is the brother brought out Romans 8 and 16, because when you talk to a so-called Dominican, they do the same shit that the so-called black man, so-called Haitian, so-called Jamaican people do. All the tribes, we have things of our customs, our ancient customs that we still keep today.
Mhm.
All right, so
Con.
finishing political and economic manipulation. Trujillo controlled Dominican land along the border where Haitians often worked as laborers. He exploited this labor by simultaneously demonized them. Oh, but simultaneously demonized them by pushing anti-Haitian sentiment. He distracted Dominicans from his brutality, corruption, and repression, uniting them against a common enemy. And bringing the parallels to today, that's how Esau has done with the so-called white man. All right,
Right.
his lower Edomite brethren, he was able to distract them, all right, from, like you said, the brutality, corruption, and all that, because they were able to make the so-called black man, all right, the common enemy. So as long as they're doing better than them, they don't even know how they're getting fucked over by their leader.
Right.
It
Right.
says Trujillo institutionalized anti-Haitian racism in the in the Dominican Republic. His ideology survived through political elites, immigration policies, and border conflicts. Even today, debates about citizenship, migration, and race between the two nations echo Trujillo's propaganda. So, just bringing all this out, for edification purposes, to show you this was Esau's doing that really pushed that hatred between the tribes of Levi and Simeon.
Mhm. Con. We can continue on that Deuteronomy, Genesis 47. We just finished that out because we
Gotcha.
we already touched on, a lot of key points that point to our people. This is Simeon, right? This tribe, Simeon, are the are the Dominicans, right? Those people living in the Dominican Republic, man. All signs, show that these are the people, man. Like,
Yeah,
it's clear. Like we can see it. You know what
yeah.
I'm saying?
Because if I can add, because when you look at the common denominator of all the tribes who's over them, the Edomites, whether it be the British, the Spanish, and the French,
Hmm.
have all had a heavy influence on the tribes, man.
Right.
All right.
It's just like the rest of the tribes. All the rest of the tribes have all been manipulated. Whether it's from Gad, whether it's from Judah, because you had what's it called, the Buffalo Soldiers.
Yep.
You had Issachar that came up north and try to fight against Gad. By Esau calling Gad savages. That we had to take out these savages and all this and that. So there's a lot of divide and conquer that Esau has been doing, man. This man's lies, as the scripture says, pretty much will walk throughout the earth, man. Like this man has really, really destroyed our people in a sense to where our people are very fragmented,
Yep.
very divided. There's no unity, but this is why the prophets were brought back, to bring that unity back, starting with the elect.
That's right.
I got scripture if I can.
You got it.
Go ahead, bro.
This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 33, and it says, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together,
Mm.
and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go." I pretty much want to bring this out because we was all essentially oppressed, chiefly in America, Babylon the Great. The scriptures go into how we will be scattered. But the chief predominant place that all the tribes is at is in America, Babylon the Great.
Hmm.
And it says that we're oppressed together by who? The so-called white men.
Hmm.
Because all the, like I just made mention of, all the tribes have Esau as the main antagonist that's over us. So going back, Genesis 49 and verse 7, it says, "Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel."
Hmm. So as we've been reading, all the curses pretty much took hold of Jake, right? But not even that, like specific curses fell upon certain tribes, and as we've been reading, some of these curses and some of these characteristics, have fallen upon Simeon, right? But also, I want to touch on that point where it says, "I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel," because all the tribes have been scattered, right? But when you look at specifically, when it comes to Levi's been scattered, throughout all the tribes. You know, I mean, we know that they're primarily in the land of Haiti, but Levi's been shipped around everywhere. And also when it comes to Simeon, when it comes to the Taínos, they were pretty much crushed. They were destroyed. They were genocided, and the majority of those there are Simeonites. But a lot of them, who knows where they went? They were pretty much scattered. They were enslaved. They were shipped over to this island, that island, to the Americas, South America, Central America, right? So I want to get that article where it says Taino Indigenous Caribbeans. I believe is the fourth article that I sent you.
Got you right here.
Kind of. So I'll just read it off my phone real quick.
Mm-hmm.
It says the Taínos were an Arawak people who were the indigenous people of the Caribbean and Florida at the time of European contact in the late 15th century. They were the principal inhabitants of most of Cuba, Jamaica, Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and Puerto Rico, right? So primarily honing in on the Dominican Republic, right? But it says the Greater Antilles, the Northern Lesser Antilles, and the Bahamas, they were known as the Lucayans and spoke the Taino language, a derivative of the Arawakan languages, right? It says the ancestors of the Taino entered the Caribbean from South America. At the time of contact, the Taino were divided into three broad groups known as the Western Taino, Jamaica, most of Cuba, and the Bahamas. So, let me finish this out. The classic Taino, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico, and the Eastern Taino, Northern Lesser Antilles, and a fourth lesser known group went on to travel to Florida and divided into tribes. At present, we know that there are four named tribes: the Tesquesta, Calusa, uh, uh, Jaega, or Huaega, and Ais. Other tribes are known to have settled in Florida, but their names are not known.
Mm.
So that pretty much kind of like gives me a kind of gives you an idea of what's going on, right? Because you have the what was it? What make up the Tainos? It was Simeon, Manasseh, Ephraim, and I believe that's it, right? If I'm not mistaken.
It said Jamaica, so you said Benjamin too, right?
Well, I
God,
know.
Benjamin.
Well, I know Benjamin. They came. They came after.
Okay.
What it
Yes. Yeah, they came
is?
after during the transatlantic slavery.
Yeah, they I believe if I'm not mistaken, so-called Tainos inhabited those lands in Jamaica.
Kind of. The Tainos would make up. Wouldn't it be? It would be Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, right?
Right, right, yeah.
So pretty much, these are the tribes that were living there, right? But as we're gonna go into here in a minute, I'm gonna skip down a little bit. It says the Taino were historically enemies of the neighboring Carib tribes. Other groups, I skipped down like, let me see, I skipped down three paragraphs.
Okay,
But
I'm with you.
it says the Tainos were historically enemies of the neighboring Carib tribes, another group with origins in South America, who lived principally in the Lesser Antilles. The relationship between the two groups has been subject of much study. For much of the 15th century, the Taino tribe was being driven to the northeast in the Caribbean and out of what is now South America because of raids by the Carib, resulting in women being taken in raids and many Carib women speaking Taino. But it says the Spaniards who first arrived in the Bahamas, Cuba, and Hispaniola in 1492, and later in Puerto Rico, did not bring women in their first expedition. They took Taino women for their common law wives, resulting in mestizo children. Right. So pretty much that Rafael Trujillo, he will be a mestizo.
Yep.
But it says sexual violence in Hispaniola with the Taino women by the Spanish was also common. Scholars suggest there was substantial racial and cultural mixing in Cuba as well, and several Indian pueblos survived in the 19th century. Right. So the Most High preserved Jake. Right.
Right.
He kept, a remnant, still alive. But for the most part, the Tainos pretty much wiped out, right? But it says the Taino became nearly extinct as a culture following settlement by Spanish colonists, primarily due to infectious diseases to which they had no immunity. So pretty much the curses started coming upon Jake,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Because
this is kind of what happened with Gad in
mhm,
a similar story.
kind of. It says the first recorded smallpox outbreak in Hispaniola occurred in December 1518 or January 1519. The 1518 smallpox epidemic killed 90% of the natives who had not already perished. That's crazy. So that's 90% of those who had not already perished. Because when you go into the history of Christopher Columbus and his men, there was in Christopher Columbus's journal said that he couldn't put the sword down.
Hmm.
Pretty much going into how much killing he was doing. But it says um, warfare and harsh enslavement by the colonists. had also caused many deaths. By 1548, the native population had declined to fewer than 500. That's crazy, bro. Like, and there's several other accounts that are talking about how in those lands there were a little bit over a million in population, just to be cut down to fewer than 500.
And this
So,
this is the, if I can say, this is the history that Esau has tried to hide,
mhm,
because as we see, these devils are trying to, hide their sins. But as we bring it out, man, the Most High is requiring that which is past. So this is history that our people don't really know about.
mhm.
I got scripture if I can.
Go ahead, bro.
This is Genesis 49 and verse 22. And it says, Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. And which Joseph is talking about, again, the northern kingdom, which the head tribe of the northern kingdom is going into Ephraim. But it says, the archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him, but his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty power of Yahweh. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. And pretty much those archers was talking about the Spanish conquistadors. But the point that I wanted to get was essentially, Manasseh and Ephraim was pretty much a lot of them was wiped out. They was the so-called Taínos, and then some of Simeon as well. Pretty much a lot of them was wiped out. But the Lord had it to where it was a portion of them that was preserved.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's nothing for Northern Kingdom to repopulate, man. Hey, all Northern Kingdom tribes, for the most part, are fruitful as hell. So that was nothing for the Lord to preserve them and rebuild them.
Right, right. But it says by 1548, the native population had declined to fewer than 500. Starting in about 1840, there had been attempts to create a quasi indigenous Taino identity, which quasi just means to resemble, right? It was a resemblance of the indigenous Tainos. But a lot of those that did create that quasi Taino identity groups, a lot of them are descendants of those people. But it says the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. It says this trend accelerated among the Puerto Rican community in the United States in the 1960s. So this is just showing you how Jake is coming back to their roots, but not really, because they're just going back a certain distance back. You really got to tap in further back. Who were we before the Tainos, right?
Ooh, let me add to you, since you said that, that's the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gonna further add to the information we just brought out. So going back to that Medium site, we're gonna jump down. So right here it says, when the Spaniards eventually found the island, Christopher Columbus named the island Hispaniola. It was also known as Santo Domingo. The Taino natives, however, called it, I say this word, bro, Quisqueya.
Uh, yeah, Quisqueya.
Quisqueya. All right. It says the name Quisqueya is believed to mean the mother of all lands, and has associations linked to Hebrew, just as the native language of the island was considered to be corrupt Hebrew. And then this is an excerpt from William Fleming, a gazetter of the Old and New Testaments, to which is added the natural history of the Bible, published in 1838. So, these different things are sourced, just to provide the background. But as you see here, it says Bartholomew Las Cies was a Dominican Spaniard and Bishop of Chiapa. His work on New Spain was never published, but it is certain that he was so much struck with the appearance of the Mexicans and other Indian tribes whom he took to be real Hebrews, that he exclaimed, Loquella, and I can't even read that, so I'm not going to try. It says,
Mm-hmm.
thy speech betrays thee, and we are assured by an author that Las Cias even goes as far as to say the language of the island of Santo Domingo was corrupt Hebrew. So just proving that fact. So the Edomites knew who we were. Okay.
Mhm.
So it says, so we have more consistency that within the Americas and again here in the Caribbean, the native language is linked to Hebrew. Many Jayish customs of the natives outside of the powerful kingdoms among the interior of the Americas was recognized and spoken of often regarding the original or the origin of Native Americans.
If I can add to your point too, it said that pretty much it was corrupt Hebrew. When you look at a lot of the surrounding geography of like what they call the Caribbean, Hispaniola, I believe islands like the Bahamas. A lot of those have like Hebrew words like Mar in it, which is found in Spanish. You got the word Haiti, which is Haiti, which I believe that was in that article. It will be Ayatya, which is mountainous heat with me, or mountain with me. So pretty much it goes back into like broken Hebrew.
Mm,
Mhm.
kind.
Should
It
even,
says,
if I may add too, even the name Taino, right? What was I go back to Wab Iron?
Tawab Ain, because pretty much what they did was they took the TA, the Ta, and then the IN is Ain, all right, and it was essentially like a like an acronym, if you will. They got the TA from Tawab, the IN is Ain, so for good people.
oh wow,
Mhm.
kind. It says a similarity of the manners and customs of the Indian tribes far removed from the central monarchies of Mexico and Peru to those of the Jews, which writers who are not Spaniards have noticed, such as the celebrated Sir William Penn, who in his letter on the present state of America thus observes the eyes are black like Jews, they reckon by moons, they offer the first fruits, they have a feast of tabernacles, their altar stands on 12 stones. Their mourning lasts a whole year. The customs of women are like those of the Jews. Their language is concise, masculine, full of energy, resembling the Hebrew. One word serves for three, and the rest is supplied by the understanding of the hearers. They were, and then it goes off to something else. So just showing you, as we read earlier, Esau Edom knew that we had, customs that go back to our ancient customs, man. So he knew that we were the Israelites, man. Okay.
Mhm.
So it says, so with all these references of early European writings about Native Americans being Hebrews, it interested me where so many were aware of apocryphal writings such as Second Esdras, which is not common knowledge today. I was surprised to find out that the King James Bible published in 1611. Uh, that's not really. Yeah, let's put that part. You read that earlier. Yeah, so that's pretty much the point in this one.
Well, I mean, that was pretty much all I had, Akim. I don't know if your brothers had anything else.
I mean, that's really it.
Con, con,
Uh-uh.
See,
con.
I don't know
So
what
I guess
happened to.
we'll close it up with that. That's pretty much hopefully, Lord willing, that was a beautiful edification to the spirit. We broke down who the tribe of Simeon is in modern day, which is the Dominican Republican or the Dominican Slovakia, those that inhabit the land of the Dominican Republic, right? But so with that, we're gonna go ahead and close it out by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakah double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who taught us the truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Until the next time, we're going to say shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Kwame After Allah.
Kwame Yasharala.